Hello, in this macro I'm going to illustrate 4 different macro express macros that ripple measures between single staves. These macros will not work if you wish to ripple measures of multiple staves, for instance between systems, such as say for instance if you have a string quartet, you want to move one measure on 4 staves from one system to the next system. These macros, again, they work only for rippling measures on single staves. I developed these macros because recently I had to work with a very large instrumental part project, and many of those parts required redoing the layout, which meant shuffling a lot of measures around and frequently also involved moving measures between pages, which of course in SCOR always means moving measures between files. And if you've done that in the past, you know that that's a very tedious and time-consuming process to do that. And I thought it was a good opportunity for me to develop some macros that would simplify the process somewhat. So again, 4 macros here, 2 of which ripple up or down within any given open file, and 2 of which ripple measures between pages, which means between 2 different SCOR files. So let me begin with a simple situation where, for instance, you would want to ripple the last measure on staff 4 to fall on the beginning of staff 3. If you were doing this the conventional way in SCOR, you would invoke the RIP command, the ripple command, and then you would have to answer 4 different prompts. The first one, how many staves in system, that would be 1. So the source system would be 4, the destination system would be 3, and the number of bars to move would be 1. As soon as I hit enter, the measure will be moved, like so. But let me undo this right now. I will do that by restarting the same file without saving it. And instead, this time, I'm going to invoke the macro express module that accomplishes the same result. There's 2 ways to do that. One is by choosing it from a menu. The other one is by invoking a keyboard shortcut. I'll invoke it from a menu for now to show you how I've situated these macros in my menu structure. I go into a master menu, and there I have an edit menu. I click on that. Down there I have a ripple measure sub-menu, and in that sub-menu I have the 4 ripple macros that I currently have. So the one that will be applicable in this case will be the one that's called ripple measures down. And as you can see, it does have a activation key of control minus that will activate the macro. But for now I'm going to select it from this menu. So now instead of answering 4 prompts, I only have to answer 2 prompts. The first one of which is that I indicate from which staff I wish to ripple, which is staff 4, and how many measures I want to ripple, which is 1. And then it'll do that in the same way as SCOR would otherwise do that, but with the added wrinkle that at the end I get a confirmation screen that's a confirmation window that says, do you wish to accept the rippling down of the measures you indicated, and you can either accept or undo. I'm going to undo that for now. So instead of typing in reload this file, you can just say undo when you're finished. I'm going to do this again, this time with the keyboard shortcut, control minus, staff 4 and 1 measure. And then I want to point out something else that is going to happen, which is that if you look at this measure number, of course, once this measure is moved over here, the measure number needs to change to 195. And that's been built into this macro as an additional command. So I'm going to do this now. And as you can see, the measure has been rippled, and the measure number has been changed to 195. I'll undo this again. This time I'm going to ripple 2 measures, 4 and then 2 measures. And now you can see the measure has been changed to 194. But there is a problem, of course, because these are block rests. And that means that actually 185, 86, 87, this needs to be measure 188. The macro does not possess the intelligence to be able to evaluate block rests within a staff. It really only looks at how many measures you tell it to move, and then it applies that number to the parameter 5 of the code 10 element at the beginning of the staff. So you still have to examine that if they're block rests to see and make additional modifications. So that's just one thing to be aware of. You could actually automate this completely, but then you'd have to invoke edit score with some edit score script in the background. You can do that. It would slow the process down a little bit, but you would then get 100% accurate results because you could always account for block rests within a given staff. But in any event, if you're just using score, internal score command structure, and you're staying inside the score program for that, you really can't build such intelligence into that. Anyway, for now I'm going to undo that. The situation is a bit more complicated, of course, if you need to ripple measures from one page to another, which in SCORE means from one file to another file, which invariably means that you have to work through some kind of intermediary file. Let's say, for instance, that I wanted to move the final measure on this page, this whole measure rest, to the next page, to the top of the next page, right here. In order to do that, I'd first have to save this file and then manipulate the file and then import it into the target file and manipulate that file. If you haven't done it before, I'll give you a quick manual demonstration of how to accomplish this. So first I save it as an intermediary file, like this. I delete all the staves I don't need. Target file, assuming that I actually remember what the file name of my target file is. In this case, that's easy. I move everything on above out of the way. Then I import my intermediate file like this. Now I ripple. One step on the system, source system 10, destination system 9, map bars to move 1, like this. I delete these stuff that I imported. I move the stuff from above back down again by one staff. So I change this to measure 208, like that, and go back to the preceding file. I manually delete the measure that I moved, and I do an LJ, like this, save, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's how it's done if you do it typing all the commands manually in SCORE. So in order to facilitate this process, because that's a lot of typing and you can easily make typographical errors and you might forget what the file names are of the files that you're moving between. So it's a tedious and cumbersome process. So I've made two macro express macros that allow me to ripple measures backwards and forwards between files. So let's assume the situation actually now is as follows. We're looking at this page. This is a recto, a right-hand page, in an instrumental part book, and I decide that there's not enough of a rest here for the instrument to be able to turn the page comfortably. And I look in the next file, and I see at the top, oh, well, there's a whole rest, whole measure rest. I can move that one forward. So now I'm going to do this with one of my macro express macros. I go into my master menu, edit, ripple measures, and the relevant macro is called ripple measures to the previous page. I select it from here. And first I get a prompt that tells me between which files would be rippled. It's a ripple measures from source file AAAB.muse to target file AAAA.muse. If you use conventional file nomenclature, this should be 100% accurate. It looks in the directory where you're currently working, it looks at your current file, and then looks at the file that has an adjacent file name. If you're not satisfied with that, if you're actually using discontiguous files or the file nomenclature doesn't show up as expected, you can also choose files manually by clicking on here. In that case, you get a conventional file manager that opens right here, and you can select any old file like that. And then you can select your target file. Let me just pick another one like this. and you get a confirmation as to what your source and your target files are, and then you proceed as normal. But I'm not going to do that here because the file nomenclatures that were captured actually were accurate. So again, I'm going to invoke this macro now and actually run it. So here it gives me the files. I'm satisfied with that. I'm going to ripple between these files. I click OK. First it asks me how many measures I want to move. I say 1. Then it asks me for the source staff, which I can see is source staff 9. And as soon as I enter, it's going to open the target file and go to the bottom of the screen so I can see what the P2 value of the target staff is. So watch what happens. There's the target file, and you can see that the target staff is has a P2 of 2. So I enter that, and then I get a confirmation box that says AAAB.muse source staff equals 9, AAA.muse target staff equals 2, measures to move equals 1, and I'm happy with that. So I click proceed, and everything that happens from this point forward is completely automatic. Alright, so again I get my prompt accept. Do you wish to accept the rippling up? You can say accept or undo, but let's have a look at the result first. Here is my whole measure rest. It has been moved forward. That's good. 202, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The next measure should be measure 209, and it is. So I'm happy with the result. I click accept, and I get a final information prompt that says verify measure numbers on items such as slurs, page numbers, headers, footers, etc., because you may still have to do some adjustments. But in this case, I think I'm done. I click OK, and I'm finished. So I'm going to invoke this now from a keyboard shortcut instead. I'm going to ripple this measure back to the next measure one more time for completeness sake by tapping Control F. Here are my files. I'm going to move one measure. The source staff is 2, the destination staff is 9, confirmation, and proceed. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that's measure 208 with my whole measure rest. I'm happy. I say accept and OK, and process is finished. These 4 macros are now available for download on www.scorbox.com. I look forward to hearing from you, especially if you have suggestions for how these macros could be improved, or if you have ideas as to how these macros could be expanded to allow for the rippling of multiple staves at once. I don't think it's too complex. It might take a little bit of time, especially when moving across files, and it will probably require some thought how to do that in the most practical way. In any event, I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much for watching.